Hey, it is Chris. It is Tuesday, August the 20th. So last night was the first night of the Democratic National Convention. General thoughts. It went way too long. Joe Biden went on stage at 11:26. And this one, thank you, balloons. And this one, which I think is my biggest takeaway, and I think one that kind of looks forward, which is that Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, the very liberal member of Congress from New York and very young, she's 34, killed it. To me, she clearly had the best speech of the night. It was ringing endorsement of Kamala Harris. It was bashing of Donald Trump. She called him a two-bit huckster. And it really got the crowd going. So I went back because I was trying to figure out whether Ocasio-Cortez, who has been a huge star since she won her election, she beat a member of Democratic leadership. She was a bartender. No one had ever heard of her. She ran that the Democratic Party establishment was sort of faltering, and she got elected at a very young age. So she's been a star. But I went back and looked at 4 years ago what role she played at the convention. Because on Monday night, she spoke in prime time, which is a big deal. She spoke for 90 seconds in the 2020 convention, and she was basically just sort of like perfunctorily nominating Bernie Sanders for president because Sanders got some delegates in that race, so she was sort of representing that. It was 90 seconds. Like, if you blinked, you missed it. So from then to Monday night, where she delivered, I didn't time it, but a 5 to 10 minute speech, is remarkable. And I think it speaks to a couple things. One, I think it speaks to the party has moved left. Kamala Harris is not Joe Biden, right? Kamala Harris is more liberal than Joe Biden, and voices like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are more appealing to the Kamala Harris base. Two, and I think this is really important, the party just hasn't moved left. AOC has, I don't want to say moved to the center because most of her policies are similar, but tonally, she has absolutely played ball a whole lot more than she did 4 years ago. She has become a Biden surrogate. She has sort of been more supportive of leadership, generally speaking. And I think that goes to the fact that she wants to be more than just kind of like a loud voice from the liberal end of the party. I think she wants to be a major player. And I think what we saw last night speaks to her abilities, her natural talent. And don't just ask me. Go and look up Donald Trump's comments about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He thinks she's the most talented person in the Democratic Party. And I would say, based on that speech last night, she's certainly in the top 5 of active politicians. In terms of their ability to give a speech and get a crowd going, that is not easy, especially if you're not the last speech of the night, right? And she did it. And I think she did it better than anyone else who spoke. Okay, all of which gets us to what's next for her. Like I said, she's 34. She turns 35 in October. When you're 35, you can run for president. Is she going to run for president? I mean, that depends on a lot. Yes, at some point, I think she will. I mean, it depends on a lot of factors in the near term, right? If Harris wins in November, she'll run for re-election in 2028, presumably. And AOC would have to wait till 2032 when she would be, quick math, in her early 40s, which is fine. If Harris loses, we don't talk enough about, I don't think, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We talk about Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, rightly so. We talk about Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania. Obviously, Tim Walz now the vice presidential nominee. Maybe he'd be in the the presidential mix. Gavin Newsom from California. So we talk about a lot of those folks, but we don't talk about her. And I actually think, given the sort of liberal lean of the party, I actually think she would have a real chance. And also, before I do any more, let me go back and note this. There's not an obvious next step for her in New York politics, right? Kathy Hochul is the governor. She said she is running for another term in 2026. That would be 2030, assuming she wins. So that's a while. Chuck Schumer is the Senate majority leader currently. He's not giving that job up anytime soon. And Kirsten Gillibrand, the other senator from New York, is young and not going anywhere. So there's not like a lot of room for upward movement in New York, which makes me think that the sort of presidential thing could take off. Probably not 2028, but maybe. And I do think she has real ability and talent. And I think she represents a part of the party that's voice is getting louder. The question for me, as it relates to her national prospects, is we kind of saw this story play out. Her politics and Bernie Sanders' politics are not that different. Sanders absolutely enlivened a coalition of Democrats, but he couldn't beat Joe Biden in 2020. They got into sort of a one-on-one race and he couldn't beat him. Now, it was COVID and things were, Trump was the nominee. So there's a lot of different factors. But I think the question that Ocasio Cortez will need to answer is, can that sort of very clear lefty politics, right? She's not trying to be a centrist. That lefty politics, can that work at winning a Democratic nomination? Can a true unapologetic liberal, she's actually a Democratic socialist, even though she caucuses with Democrats, can that be a majority coalition in the Democratic Party first? And then obviously, can someone like that win a general election? So that's the question. And I actually think she's the voice that will probably test that. Going forward at the national level, she's the most prominent and best spokesman for that very liberal left within the Democratic Party. And I think someone who has the talent and ambition to run for president at some point. But I was just really struck by, obviously I know she's talented. Obviously she's very high profile, but I was just struck at how good she was on Monday night. A real star among a lot of very high-profile political people, including the President of the United States, who spoke that night. So that's my big takeaway. AOC, what does she do next? Because she's going to do something. You don't have all that talent and stay just in the House for your entire career. So she's going to do something else. I would assume it's president, and I would assume it's probably shortest term 2028, midterm 2032, but she's going to run, so keep an eye on her. All right, as always, I ask you to do 4 things. I ask you to subscribe to this channel. Easy, just hit subscribe. We're trying to get to 40,000 by the end of August. Come on, people, we're at 36. We can do this. Push. I ask you to like this video, I ask you to comment on this video, and I ask you to tell 10 friends. As always, I appreciate you. I appreciate your support and your ongoing advocacy for me. It's wonderful. Got some good, exciting things coming, so stay tuned. All right, everybody take care of yourselves.